Hey, I'm Amadeus, and this is Gay in Rural France, a podcast where I talk about queer life in the countryside, mental health, and everything in between. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the podcast and the video if you're watching it on YouTube. And today we're talking about feeling lost, because I find that this is a big topic that is very recurring in my life, and I'm guessing also in other people's lives. And I thought we could expand on this. I could tell you a bit like the stations of my life, and we could just start a discussion maybe in the comments down below. So if you have had experiences that are similar to mine, or if you had experiences that are totally different, or you also feel lost, or you've been lost, and just comment down below. All right, let's dive right in. I find that feeling lost is totally normal. Let's get out of all that stigma, because I think we are all lost in different points of our lives. And I think it's a very recurring thing, as I mentioned before. And I think that social media especially makes you believe that everyone's got their beep together, So I find myself also sometimes representing or creating kind of a romantic idea of living in France, of renovating a chateau. And I think I have opened up quite a lot on my other channel about the challenges I have faced, and that it has not always been easy, and that it's not always a pleasure and wonderful and beautiful, and it's not like you're floating around your chateau being fabulous all the time. I wish it was. I really wish. But it's not. That's not life, that's not reality. And I think too many times we get sold on this idea that something should be a certain way, or it's romanticized just to gain profits from it, to make you feel better. Because obviously, we all want to know about things that are beautiful. We all want to dive into more the beauty of things, and that's why I'm here for also with my other channel. I'm not blaming anyone for romanticizing, but I do feel sometimes it can get very overwhelming and can produce the feeling that you are the only person that has not gotten their life together. And I think we're all struggling, all in different areas and in different ways. So it's totally normal to feel lost. But I wanted to dive in maybe more in my own experiences, on my personal experiences. And one of the first experiences that was very big for me was my divorce. So just to shorten up the story, I was married for, 4 or 5 years? Yes, I think so. We got married in 18, and then we got divorced in 23. So I've been divorced for 2 years. In 23? Wow, that's already... I think that's it. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. So we were married for about 5 years, and yeah. I find that I was in this marriage, I also was very lost. And I am not blaming my ex-husband, not a single bit, because I think I also made the mistake of not expressing enough and not finding the right words on how to tell him at which points in life I was and how lost I actually was. I was transitioning. He was very helpful. No questions asked, I was transitioning from being a full-time dancer in a theater and being exploited, basically, working like crazy, to freelancing and actually finding my way in freelance world, and finding also the way to I need to relax, my body needs to recover. But this was a big question mark, and everything was changing constantly. and then we were looking for apartments, and then we bought an apartment together, and yeah, things just evolved, and this feeling of being lost within the relationship was very recurring for me, and I was not very verbal about it. So by the time everything was almost, or it was too late, it was just too late, you know? We didn't make it work, and I didn't see a way out of it. And so the only solution was to separate and then get a divorce. And it it's not an ideal outcome. It's not how you want things to end, obviously. I mean, if you get married, or I would presume that if you get married, you actually are planning to stay with that person. But sometimes in life, it's just not that simple. And I think it's okay to accept that. I think it's okay to say, you know, I'm 37 years old and I am divorced. And it's okay. It's you know, it's part of life. It's normal. And then um, another experience that I had then being lost was moving to France. You know, moving to France had a huge shift in my life, and was everything changed. I was on my own. In the beginning of the project, I actually was still with my ex-husband, but then pretty quickly I was on my own, and pretty quickly I had this huge project. So I had the house, I had the renovations. It was really, I didn't know where all of this was going. I did have a goal somewhere up here, but in between I was so lost, and I was so afraid that things wouldn't work out, and I was really sitting down like every few weeks, and I really felt like, where am I going? What am I doing this for? Why, you know, why? And I think that's really important, to question yourself. And I think being lost is something that actually questions our own desires, our own decisions, which is a good thing. You know, you want to be doubtful, not super doubtful. You don't want to thrive on doubt. Absolutely not. But what you want is to question your choices, and to question and your decisions, and to go within and to actually analyze like what's going on and how you feel. And I think it's a really good step to just step away from this feeling and really separate it and dissect it, and to see, okay, I might feel lost, but what are the factors around it? How do I actually understand what is going on? And I think for me, also moving to France, a big part was a different culture, a different cultural heritage. People like my partner now, he's French, so he has different cultural references. I have cultural references that are very mixed, because I was born in Poland, I grew up in Germany. My parents basically didn't live a very normal German life, you know, not like other German families that had like very German traditions, that were like watching specific German TV shows, listening to specific radio shows, you know, all these kind of little cultural references I already don't have in my German side, basically, when I compare myself or I talk to German friends. And then I have all those cultural references of my parents that are kind of like in the 80s of Poland, like 70s, 80s. So coming back to Poland, when I was working back in Poland in the opera house, my very first job, I had all those weird cultural references that older company members might remember, but oh, that I kicked the camera, I'm sorry. But younger ones wouldn't have, you know? And that was just like, it puts you in a very, very odd place. So I think this was happening in France again, where I realized, okay, when we were talking about certain things, there were certain cultural references I didn't have. So this makes you feel detached a bit, and it makes you feel kind of like I'm floating around in space, and I don't have an anchor. And I think that's the most horrible part of being lost, or this feeling of being lost. And then there's also juggling millions of projects like I am doing. Like I have this podcast slash YouTube channel. I have my other YouTube channel, Le Demi Chateau, which you might know, might not. And I also have all my renovations in my house that are plentiful. I have all the maintenance work in my house. I have all the garden work outside, which I'm doing all alone. I have website maintenance. I have the whole maintenance of all the programs that I want to grow here, like the retreats, like the weekend getaways, the boutique retreats. Then I have this whole aspect of my professional cultural work, which is dancing and choreography, which I still partially do in Germany, but I'm also building it out here. I'm building an association that is running a festival that is now in its second edition and is already planning the third edition. I'm meeting with people around from cultural areas to build up this association to actually bring dance and choreography to a very rural space. So you see, there's not a loss of projects here. It's like I have a million ideas, and I think the day I'm out of ideas, it's gonna be like, I think I'm gonna be dead, like literally. And it can be very overwhelming, and this overwhelm can lead you into this moment of being lost, where you're like, but what am I doing? I'm doing all these projects and all these different things are moving around me, and I don't really feel like, I was mentioning before, I don't really feel like I have an anchor, which makes life sometimes very difficult, especially if you're used to have very structured surroundings. So I find that this can also sometimes lead to this feeling of being lost and being alone and being afraid, essentially, because that's it. You're afraid of where you're steering, where you're going. And I think that, and this brings me to the next point, that the feeling of being lost is actually a sign of growth. It's nothing bad. It's actually, you're seeing growth happening. You're seeing that you're growing into something. You're seeing that you're evaluating a situation. You're actually like taking the time. If you acknowledge that feeling and if you dive into it, you actually find like all those factors about what you want in a project and what you don't want in a project, or if you want to handle millions of projects around yourself or not. I mean, there's all different types of people, and I'm a type of person, I love having this. I love the rush of like all these projects and all these different kind of construction sites that I built, because I just needed to function as well, because I know that if I don't have all of this, it's ça manque, you know. If you say it in French. I don't have the English expression right now. I miss it, you know. I truly miss it if I'm not surrounded by project. I think it's also about refining your direction, whereas you're going to a set plan. And I think this feeling helps a lot in curating your direction in life. And I think if you acknowledge that, then you will actually experience much more growth than you would if you would not experience it. Does that make sense for you? And I think it's also about fulfillment, because we all want to be fulfilled. So either we want to start a project because there's different ways you want to start a project off. So either you want to start a project because you feel that it's a very egocentric way. You want to do something, it's from yourself, or you also, it's a more communal thing because you want to do something for the community. Knowing also the purposes of each project and each thing you do and assessing it can actually also ultimately get rid of this feeling of being lost. And then there's also sometimes the problem that people like me have is that you are actually starting to do too much when you feel lost, which is also very problematic because you might end up doing a lot of projects and then throwing them away because you feel that this project is not what you intended it to be or not wanted it to be or wanted it to be. Not. Sometimes it can feel, and I did have this feeling also with YouTube quite a lot, that you're doing quite a lot, you're putting a lot of work in, but you're asking yourself, where does it lead? And I think where usually it helps me to think of the long term rather than the short term, and also once again assessing, why am I doing this? Why did I start it in the first place? Did I start it because of financial reasons, or did I start it because it's something that I'm passionate about? And I think that's kind of where the way splits in two, and where there's two routes. And I'm not saying that one of them is good and the other one isn't. It's just a very personal decision and a personal way of following down a path with certain projects, you know? And I have a really nice quote here, and I think it's that understanding that success isn't about having clarity, but actually taking the next step into uncertainty. And I think success can also be measured by so many ways, and I think like that this feeling of being lost is very connected to success and very connected to a very productive society, and a society that promotes productive people and that doesn't really necessarily take into account that we all need time to reflect. Which leads me to my conclusions that actually being lost is quite good, you know? It shows that you are actually invested in something and that you are questioning it and that you are actually thinking about something, and that it makes you reflect on your decisions, on the steps along the way, on the future steps, and it will only make you grow. And I think it's about accepting this feeling and about accepting that we all feel lost, and it doesn't go away when we reach a certain age, but it's totally normal. It's totally normal to question ourselves from time to time, as long as we don't overdo it, which can also lead to a bit of problems. But overall, I find just like being bored is good for you and your creativity, sometimes also being lost is good for you and your path in your life. Sometimes it's also not about finding a single answer for something, rather than to allow yourself to explore all the possibilities. I think sometimes we limit ourselves also. So just let it go. Be okay with it. Be okay that life gives you a ton of possibilities, and whichever you choose is going to be the right one in that moment. And it's okay that you don't know all the answers. It's all fine. None of us do. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then please leave it a like, comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are watching and hearing it on YouTube. Other than that, I will speak to you next Friday morning. Until then, bisous and au revoir from the southwest of France. Bye guys!